Hey there, Limitless Leaders. We are so excited because today we not only have an amazing special guest that's going to really talk to us about this idea of co-teaching, but we are thinking about what does future proofing look like when we have shared ownership in real time. The one thing that we know is co-teaching is not a staffing strategy. Absolutely not. Co-teaching is a leadership strategy in motion. If we want to ensure that all students are able to show up, to speak up, and to level up, then that means that the adults who are entrusted with their care for across the continuum of special education must understand that there's a greater purpose. And what happens? Students win every single time. So without further ado, I'm so excited to have Beth here today. Beth, welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you
Hey,
doing?
Mary. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to talk with you as always.
Absolutely. Let me tell you all, I met Beth earlier this year and it was just kismet because we were both at a conference. She was there talking about her amazing business, which you're going to hear about here in a moment, but we just connected. And what I love about this work is when you find professionals who not only are like-minded in the work, but also rooted and grounded in keeping the main thing. And that's what Beth does. She's not only an advocate, she is not only an ally, but she is just an awesome human who truly believes in the power of collaboration around this co-teaching model. So Beth, let's kick it off and let's really talk about, because I think as the co-teaching conversation has evolved, we have so many different definitions of what it is. So I want to hear from you. What does co-teaching really mean in real time? And what does it mean to lead from where you're at in co-teaching?
So, co-teaching is two equally licensed, if not the same certification, professionals equally responsible for a group of students who are mixed, who are diverse, who represent the range of humanity that exists in our world. So, from my lens, just to say, to be 100% transparent, is that I'm an inclusion person. And so that means to me that all children, not the ones that people send somewhere else, not the people that some send out of district, but all children need to be educated together. Now, not that many people are doing that, but in the co-teaching world, regardless of the range that you have, there is a range of people sitting before you that the two of you are equally responsible for. So that requires an incredible level of, to use your word, agility, an incredible level of relational intelligence, and endless discernment minute to minute.
Mm.
And there's two levels of leadership here. There is the
Mhm.
leadership from the administrative body in establishing partnerships, classrooms, etc. And then there's the leadership in the classroom. So which one do you want to talk about?
Oh, this is so good because you're dovetailing. Before we talk about each one of those, because I think
Sure.
you just dropped some powerful nuggets. When we think about future proofing, we're thinking about all learners
All
and
humans, yes.
all leaders. You just talked about the like-mindedness that comes with equally licensed professionals, and I love what you said, discernment in the moment. Beth, our world mirrors these classrooms that we're talking about. You won't walk into a workplace and only find one kind of thinker, one neurodivergent leader, one leader who may have autism or may be on the spectrum or whatever when it comes to how we think, how we move, and how we were born. Why does it matter now more than ever, before we talk about these two paths, that we embrace this idea of co-teaching as we look to the future?
Well, I feel, Mary, that our world is becoming more and more diverse all of the time. And on some level, it's not. It always was there, but it was more hidden.
Mm,
Now it's more accessible and available to see. And what I always say to people, and this may sound very simple, but I think it's extremely complex in its simplicity, is that if we want adults to be able to live, work, and play in this incredibly diverse world in which we live, that's got to start with the babies. It's got to start with the children. because the children don't have the preconceived notions and the biases and the judgments that we all grow up with, that adults carry. And so if you are in a situation or in a community where there might be a child living in the community who has a more significant disability, whether a physical disability or an intellectual disability or a social emotional disability,
Mhm.
and that person is a full member of the schools that they go to and is in classrooms with the kids who live down the block. When that person is an adult and is in a workplace or living in a community, it's no big deal because everybody gets each other and everybody understands. But because we
Mm,
tend to segregate people, then in adulthood, when this person who functions really differently than you shows up in your workplace, it's like, what do we do here? Or shows up
mhm,
in your place of worship or in the grocery store.
mm, mhm.
And so when kids of all backgrounds, abilities, whatever that means, are all learning and working and playing together, they develop the skills they need to collaborate with everybody, which is what we need to make this world work.
Love this. Oh, thank you, Beth, because I think this is exactly why we're having this conversation
Yeah.
because there's a lot of learning that has to happen. So take me down the path, the two paths. Start with you said there's learning on both sides. Maybe give us a really concise, just eagle eye view of the shared pathway for the leaders and then what's happening on the learner side because I think oftentimes in education, we focus so much on adults, checklists, compliance, certification. There's an
Mm-hmm.
experience happening on the other side of this co-teaching. Talk to us.
Correct. So on the big picture leader level, district level leaders, building level leaders, one of the largest mistakes that they make is they don't look at themselves first. They don't ask themselves the question, who do we believe belongs in these classrooms? And there are people think that there's some law that tells us who belong, and that's actually not true. And so we ask leaders to really dig deep into what their belief system is and creating a vision that maybe expands that a little bit or helps other people to expand that a little bit so that it's not just like, oh, these people belong in co-teaching, but like, how can co-teaching serve the range of people? So that's the first step, is looking at themselves and creating a shared vision. And then the next piece that's more on a practical level
Mhm.
is mindfully pairing people, not because they're best friends, that doesn't often work, but who can work together, whose gifts and strengths and talents are complementary to each other, and then training those people, giving them the tools they need. A lot of people just dump people into co-teaching and say, have fun. You know, I always say to
Mm,
teachers, Mary, think about if you're going to do a cooperative learning group and you give the kids no structure, no roles, no defined way to interact and to complete this task, what tends to happen?
mm, mhm.
One person does all the work, some
Yeah.
chaos. They don't, it's the same thing with co-teachers. We just dump them in a classroom and say, go. So they need training and they need planning time and they need a
Mm,
support system. And so on the
mm,
leadership level, I'm going to tell you a story. And I know I'm probably going to go on too long. You said concise, but there are administrative teams who will call me and say, well, I'm meeting with them and they're saying this. And when I ask who they're meeting with, it's the special ed director meeting with the special educators, not the partners.
mm.
And so it's so important that people at that big picture admin leader level view
Uh-huh.
these people as a unit. When
Okay.
we're training them together. When we're problem solving with them, we're problem solving them together. When we're listening to what their needs are, we're listening to their needs together because we want
Mm,
them to behave that way in the classroom. If as
yeah.
the administrators, the gen ed administrator and the special ed administrator, or the person who's in charge of English language learners, who's also
Right.
co-teaching, operate as completely separate entities, how
Okay.
are we leading and modeling what we want teachers to do?
Right. Right. You said something really key. You gave three parts. It's the training, it's the planning time, and then it's the actual implementation.
Correct.
Really quickly, future proofing is
Yes.
going to require us to look at time differently. It is
Yes.
going to require us to look at our master schedules differently, how
Yes.
we create structures for not just PLCs for the sake of PLCs, but
Mm-mm.
PLCs for the sake of learning attainment, learning exposure, and learning implementation based on who the learners are.
Correct.
So we have some real antiquated conceptions of what time is. And if that planning time doesn't happen in co-teaching,
Yeah.
tell us what's the one fallout that we don't talk about a lot. If that planning time isn't protected, isn't actualized, and isn't a
Hmm.
representation of the time we actually have. What's just one thing really quickly that happens when we don't plan to plan?
Kids get more uniform instruction without differentiation, without small group instruction. The only thing in 40 years that hasn't changed from the evidence is the benefit of small group instruction.
So, Beth, you've talked about the structure, you've talked about the why, you've talked about the purpose.
Hmm.
If educators could make one move, we're sitting here at the end of 2025 and we're looking into a very nuanced, very nebulous future when it comes to how public education is going to continue, how it's going to be funded, and how it's going to show up.
Hmm.
What's one thing, if you could tell
Hmm.
educators, this is your future proof move toward co teaching, toward that inclusive model, what would it be?
Is to look at your own belief systems and the practices that come out of it based on what you believe. Because if you only believe that these people belong, that these children can, that these
Mm,
children are possible to move along in future proofing, that's going to lead to
mhm.
this kind of practice. When you can look at your own belief systems and start to stretch, even if it's painful, even if you need people to work through it with, your practice expands
Mm,
and
mm,
provides more access and more availability to more students.
absolutely. Oh, Beth, when you're singing my song right now because a lot of leadership work today, particularly as we move into 2026 and beyond, the container you have mentally is going to be the container you show up with in the work.
Correct.
And if your container has no space, has specific labels, or if it just is at capacity, even being at capacity, you can't open your mind to this co-teaching idea. But here's the thing, you've created so many frameworks, you've created a whole company that helps people do this. How can people connect with you? What do you offer and where can we find you?
Well, you could find us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok at Lakretz Creative Support Services.
Love
Um,
it.
our website is lakretz.com, and we have learn.lakretz.com to find little things you could buy from us. What we do is we work first with administrative bodies to help them to understand what co-teaching it is and what their role is in as leaders in creating a successful co-teaching environment for their schools. Then we do, pulling out of classroom workshops for teachers that are replicas of the classrooms we want them to do. So we don't stand in front of the room. We co-teach, we model every single thing we want them to do. They get to be a student in that way. And they get to grapple with, I like this, I don't like this. Ooh, this worked for half of the room and it didn't work for the other half of the room. These people learn this way, so they get to see what's happening for their kids. And so it's very interactive, it's very practical. They get to plan after each thing that we teach. And then we offer follow-on coaching because we don't believe in one-shot deals. And come to this one PD and your practice is going to change. That's like saying to kids, okay, here, solve the quadratic equation. Go ahead, do it. We'll talk to you in a week. You have to provide people with the ongoing support. So we provide coaching. that follows up the work that we do. And we do that about differentiated instruction and explicit instruction, all kinds of aspects of inclusive education, including co-teaching.
Oh, I love this. Beth, thank you so much. What I'm taking away is that when adults are intentional with their own minds, students get to experience collaborative problem solving. They get two dedicated adults who are locked in, not just to them, not just to their IEP, but to the little nuances and pivots and pathways that happen. I love how you said discernment in real time. And this shapes leadership culture. So Beth, thank you so much for helping us elevate awareness around co-teaching, what it is not, and how we can continue to future-proof. And we're so glad you took the time to be here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Mary. It was an honor and a privilege.